Just to remind you, I've already introduced Nadya. She's from the University of Frankfurt, from the group of Goethe, and she hopefully will talk about synthetic zippers as a new tool for engineering.
Introduction. And before I start, I would like to ask you to imagine NRPS-based building blocks that can be put together as simple as a plug into a socket. And as a result of it, electricity is indeed flowing, resulting in a functional NRPS system. Same or similar, one can imagine my today's presented strategy, by which we use so-called SYNZIPs as plug-and sockets to connect NRPS building blocks in a much faster fashion than previous postulated strategies. The title of my today's talk is therefore SYNZIPs as a tool for the rapid construction of engineered non-ribosomal peptide synthetases.
Yeah. Can we try again working closer? I don't know what buttons work sometimes and not. Okay, I will be the slide.
As it is known, non-ribosomal peptide synthetases are responsible for the assembly of numerous peptides with large structural and functional diversity. More than 20 market drugs, including antibacterials like vancomycin or anti-tumor drugs like bleomycin, are of non-ribosomal origin. Engineering these NRPS for chances to generate analogues of existing drugs in the sessional compound structures or compound libraries. In our group, we established different strategies that enable an easy and predictable engineering of NRPS. And one strategy is called the XU concept, which was established by Goethe. He postulated an ideal fusion point within the CA linker, which is located within a structural, a flexible structural structure in front of an alpha helical structure. And the fusion point has several advantages for the engineering of NRPS, as, for instance, no secondary structures and no domain-domain interactions are disturbed. Furthermore, this XU concept uses so-called exchange units instead of modules, which consist of ATC or ATC domains, which are used as building blocks. Once three exchange units, for instance, are brought together from three different NRPS, artificial NRPS can be generated as illustrated on this figure. On the basis of this concept, we decided to decorate XUs with SYNZIPs as artificial locking domains, or with other words, decorating XUs with plug-and sockets. And SYNZIPs shall have several advantages for the engineering of NRPS, which I will explain in more detail later on. First of all, I would like to talk about SYNZIPs in general. And SYNZIPs, which were published and characterized by the Keating lab, are synthetic and heterospecific alpha helices that form coil structures with very defined interaction parameters. Here you see the crystal structure of the interaction pairs in SYNZIP 1 and 2. Coils in general contain a repeating seven residue pattern, as indicated here, where positions A and D are mostly hydrophobic amino acids, mainly contributing to a very tight interface of these coil structures. Furthermore, SYNZIPs are distinguished according to their orientation into parallel and anti-parallel. SYNZIPs can be used for different synthetic applications, and we use them to connect split NRPS from different biosynthetic pathways and species to generate hybrid systems. And on this figure, it is shown how to engineer NRPS systems using SYNZIPs. And in this case, two SYNZIP pairs, an antiparallel and a parallel pair are used to connect three different NRPS to a functional enzyme. And these SYNZIPs, however, constitute a special kind of interaction network by which the pairs can communicate with each other. And this kind of network is called orthogonal. We started our experimental part by first evaluating the suitability of SYNZIPs for the engineering of NRPS, and therefore we used the xenotetrapeptide synthetase from Xenohophilus nematophila as model system. And we introduced the shortest characterized SYNZIP pair within the CA linker of our model system. And this SYNZIP connected NRPS indeed resulted in the production of one with 30% wild-type level. Furthermore, we also did negative controls by which either one or both SYNZIPs were missing, resulting either in absolutely no peptide production or in a very slight production, emphasizing the importance of SYNZIPs for the engineering of that kind of NRPS. In the next step, we generated more building blocks, either recruited from NRPS of gram-negative, Xenohophilus and Photohophilus bacteria, or we used NRPS of gram-positive bacteria like Bacillus rhizoiformis. And you see that the used NRPS system is already hybrid of the bacillotine and sulfitine synthetase, which was recently published. Furthermore, I would like to emphasize that the SYNZIP concept is a plasmid-based concept by which we encoded the building blocks on two different plasmids with different restriction markers and origin of replication. And we transformed both plasmids in our production hosts, E. coli, DH10B, MTA, and we analyzed the peptide production subsequently via HBS-CMS. And this concept allows, in comparison to the classical XU concept, a easier and much faster generation of hybrid systems, as building blocks can easily be exchanged, as illustrated on these slides. One more time. In general, it can be said that with the number of building blocks, the number of hybrids increases exponentially, which is a great advantage of the SYNZIP concept. Furthermore, SYNZIPs overcome cloning limitations, as larger NRPS systems can be divided into smaller fractions, which of course is also an advantage of that concept. In the next step, we started to create chimeric systems, and initially we used highly similar NRPS systems. In this case, the already introduced xenotetrapeptide synthetase and the GameX peptide synthetase, as illustrated in red. And these NRPS incorporate similar amino acids, which shall prevent any C domain or TE domain specification problems. And you see that both chimeric systems indeed resulted in the production of peptides in good to very good peptide yields. For instance, NRPS6 resulted in the production of peptides significantly over wild-type level or near wild-type level. And here you see the products of NRPS5 and 6, which are highlighted accordingly to the building block template. In the next step, we use more divergent building blocks, which incorporate amino acids that differ from the wild-type template. And at that point, I would like to mention the concept rules, from which one says that the specificity of the downstream domain must be respected. And that means, for instance, for NRPS7, that if the acceptor side of the C domain naturally incorporates the unit adenine, The downstream A domain shall be the new alanine specific A domain as well as applies for the exposed NRPS. And you see that these tested NRPS results in good, very good peptide titers to good peptide titers. However, we also found NRPS systems that do not respect the C domain specificity, as you can see from these both examples. For instance, NRPS 9 incorporated phenylalanine instead of arginine, and NRPS 10 was capable to incorporate phenylalanine instead of serine, and both amino acids strongly differ in polarity and size. And encouraged from the overall positive results, we decided to go a step further, and we recombined building blocks from gram-negative origin with those of gram-positive, and you see that 3 out of 4 tested NRPS indeed resulted in the production of peptides in industrial relevant fields. And the only non-functional NRPS was NRPS 14, which can be explained by the high specificity of the TEV domain of the ACPS TEV domain. However, with these results, the SYNZIP concept represents the first concept that allows the recombination of gram-positive building blocks with gram-negative. Now I would like to come to another topic, peptide libraries. And as I already mentioned, the SYNZIP concept allows easy and fast generation of hybrid systems, as building blocks can easily be exchanged. And this, of course, has advantage for the engineering of NRPS. And in the following, I will show you 2 strategies how to create peptide libraries using SYNZIPs. And for the first peptide library, we utilize only one NRPS system, in this case the game peptide synthetase, and we generate building blocks of different lengths. In the following, I will leave out all SYNZIPs, which of course are attached to every building block, just to simplify the illustration. And we started to recombine these building blocks, and when, for instance, connecting the 1 module building block with the 4 module building block, we of course get the pentapeptide as found on the right hand. When connecting this 1 module building block with the shorter building blocks, we of course get shorter products, therefore tetrapeptides, 3 peptides, and peptides. We tested all 16 possible combinations, from which only 2 did not produce the expected peptides, and therefore we found 14 remaining main products from the 14 functional systems. And there were ranking from dipeptides to octapeptides, and we also found cyclic hexa and heptapeptides. For our next peptide library, we decided to pre-split our NRPS systems, especially to increase the recombination potential, and therefore we introduced the second SYNZIP pair, SYNZIP 1 and 2, into the AT link of our model system. And this SYNZIP pair can't communicate with the first one. And for this peptide library, we decided to tackle another fusion point, the AT linker, instead of the CA. And I will not go too much into detail, but we did some preliminary experiments and decided to try another fusion point. And on this diagram, I just wanted to show you the advantage of splitting NRPS into 3. As already said, the SYNZIP concept allows the rapid construction of engineered NRPS systems, and this applies for both for bipartite and tripartite NRPS. However, the number of hybrids increases much more rapidly for the pre-split NRPS. When, for instance, generating 30 building blocks per subunit for the 3-split NRPS, we get more than 25,000 hybrids, whereas 30 building blocks per subunit for the 2-split NRPS results in 900 hybrids. Nevertheless, we also found a drop in peptide production to 65% of the 3-split NRPS compared to the 2-split. And this can be explained by the second SYNZIP pair, which is significantly longer than the first one, probably affecting the overall peptide production. For this peptide library, we started to generate in total 11 building blocks. And we recombine these building blocks, from which many results are functional, as indicated by the solid lines, but we also found non-functional systems, as indicated by the dashed lines. In total, 8 out of 11 building blocks resulted in the generation of dozens of recombined NRPS systems, as shown in the following slides. For instance, we were able to replace the baking and coding building block of NRPS 28 by a phenylalanine incorporating building block, which resulted in the product shown for NRPS 30. Or we were also capable to elongate this tetrapeptide, also from NRPS 28, to a hexapeptide shown for NRPS 32. But we also found functional NRPS systems which were composed of 3 different NRPS, which is shown here for NRPS 14. To wrap up my today's presented strategy, I would like to summarize the advantages of SYNZIPs for the engineering of NRPS. And one advantage is the rapid construction of engineered NRPS systems, as the number of hybrids increases exponentially with the number of building blocks. Furthermore, the SYNZIP concept represents the first concept that allows the recombination from positive and gram-negative NRPS. SYNZIPs overcome cloning limitations, and they result in an enhanced peptide production compared to the classical XU concept. And with these results, we laid a foundation for a strategy that potentially enable the engineering of thousands of hybrid systems. And this is also one of our next steps to develop that strategy into a high throughput strategy, increasing the potential to find bioactive compounds. And with my last slide, I would like to thank Helga for his continuous support and the opportunity to work on this topic in this group. Furthermore, I also like to thank Kena and Jonas for their co-working, support, and ideas, and both have contributed to a great part of that work as well. And I also like to thank the Goethe group for the great working atmosphere, and also the funding, including MegaSyn, for financial support. And that's all for my slide. I'm happy to take questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Nadya, for the interesting talk. We have time for some questions. Yeah.
Thanks for the great results. These are really fantastic. And is it maybe possible with these proteins also to do in vitro experiments?
Yeah, we expressed one protein. So in fact, the GAME-X peptide synthetase, the 3-split GAME-X peptide synthetase, and it was indeed possible to express these proteins, and the interaction between the SYNZIP pair is even that strong that we can take only one of the building block and isolate the remaining non-covalent building blocks as well. So we were capable to isolate all 3 building blocks only using one tag attached to one of these building blocks. So it works. Yes?
Thank you. Do you have an explanation why with the SYNZIPs, these rules that the upstream C domain has to fit the downstream A domain or the other way around. So why that doesn't really, why this is not needed?
Okay. So first of all, it is not really clear whether the acceptor side of the C domain indeed has a specificity for the downstream A domain. But we can also imagine that the increased flexibility of the A domain potentially has an effect on the condensation reaction of the SYNZIP-linked NRPS. But we have no experimental data for this. But yeah, these are two explanations for it.
Have you done a comparison at all between using classical docking domains, which are present in NRPS systems, and SYNZIPs? Because the effect of SYNZIPs is to reconstitute essentially a covalent system.
Yes.
Yes.
No, we didn't try that, but of course that would be worth to try it, and we also have an idea to do so. Yeah.
Not surprising.
If you, as far as I remember, there are a variety of different SYNZIPs pairs available. Have you only tested these two pairs, or have you compared different SYNZIP pairs with different properties and affinities and so on?
Yeah. So first of all, we used the SYNZIP 1718 pair, especially due to the small size, as we were afraid that if these SYNZIPs has any effects on the overall enzyme. And as a result of it, we needed to use SYNZIP 1 and 2, which was the only pair that can't communicate with the first one. But we also tried other pairs, of course, which resulted in a decreased peptide production, and this can be explained by the length of the SYNZIP, since we also did experiments by which we truncated these SYNZIPs. So other pairs then showed in my presentation, and they indeed resulted in an enhanced peptide production. So generally, when using SYNZIPs for the engineering of NRPS, one needs to consider the size of these pairs.
Yeah. No more questions? Then, Nadya, thank you again for the interesting talk, and thanks to all the speakers for the interesting session.